Good morning and welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX. I'm back in the studio after a week off with Bill Curdy of Northlake Medical Pharmacies, and we didn't get a chance to chat about Thanksgiving. How did it go for you and the family?
Well, it was a little unusual. We had one of my twins came down from Rockland with 3 of her kids for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they went home Wednesday night, and then the next day her twin sister came down with her daughter, and my son had to work in Eureka for the phone company, so he didn't make it, and my daughter that lives here locally chose to have their Thanksgiving at home, so there were only 4 of us. We had a 24-pound turkey.
Well, that's 6 pounds a person, really.
And all the trimming, the mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce, and dressing, and we consumed a little bit of everything, and then we had it for the next 3 days, which actually, and then we made some turkey soup, and really enjoyed it, and then gave away a lot of. We had contractors working there, so young guys, we gave them to some to take home, and but had a kind of a calm weekend. Got some Christmas things up and still making
some Christmas things up. I was in your pharmacy yesterday, and you said you got 8 trees up or something like that already.
No, it's 9.
It's 12 days of Christmas.
One downstairs, and I said, I'm not sure why she's going a little bit nuts on these things, but she's. I finally could walk into the house from the sidewalk last night without falling down, and she said it'll take 2 more days and she'll all be done. So this is.
So 2 more days means 2 more trees?
No.
Okay.
This is her holiday. She loves Christmas, and she loves getting things ready, and it'll be a fun couple of weeks to really enjoy what she's done. And then we leave it up lots of times until the Super Bowl is over.
Oh, really? Wow, that is a long time.
But I don't know that I'm
going to make it.
I can be that patient, but. We'll see.
And then, and the other side of this is my wife, who doesn't want to put up a tree this year. She's on a kick of that she doesn't want to kill the trees. And I tried to tell her, I'm like, well, they're already dead, if they're on the lot. And it's kind of that thing where you spend a lot of money on a tree that you're just going to sit there and watch die and basically sit in your house. And I said, well, let's get a fake tree. She doesn't want to do that either. So we have she's got this vase, big giant vase in the living room, and her sister gave her, those straps that go around the wine barrels, and it was like folded into a heart, and then we have Christmas lights wrapped around it. So we have a Christmas heart this year.
Well, you can keep it up to Valentine's Day.
We could, yeah. I mean, keep it up all year long, I guess. But I'm like, well, where are we going to put the presents? And then she reminded me that there are no presents this year. I'm kidding about that one.
Yeah.
In case
Matthew's
listening.
Matthew, yeah. Well, my wife has gotten into these pencil trees. They're tall, but they're skinny things. So I think
that'd actually be great in our house.
Yeah.
Space-wise, yeah, that sounds good.
And they're nice-looking trees. So we'll have a good time celebrating, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, and you guys got the nice white one here at the store that I saw yesterday, right there in the lobby, and so
So, and guess what? Santa Claus is coming today.
Oh, is he coming today?
Yeah, 2 o'clock.
Right.
2 o'clock to 6 o'clock at the Bruno store. Santa will be there, so bring your kiddies down and see Santa Claus and take a look and see if there's anything you want, and make sure he writes it down and gets you something for Christmas. So Santa will be in Northlake Pharmacy at Bruno's this afternoon from 2 o'clock till 6 o'clock. Get your kids out of school and get them down there and sit on Santa's lap, and don't kick him. I mean, I did Santa sometimes where I got the snot kicked out of me, but you try to get the little kids, that are kind to Santa, or the real tiny ones that are kind of afraid of Santa. So anyway, this is the one time this year that Santa will be at Northlake Medical Pharmacy, so we'd love to have all you with grandkids and kids from 2 o'clock this afternoon until 6 o'clock this afternoon. Come see Santa Claus. So
Does Santa mean you?
Oh, no.
No.
No,
Oh, okay.
no, this is really Santa Claus.
This is the real one.
Yeah.
Coming. All
No.
the way from the North Pole. Huh?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Had some snow up there, you know, so little skimpy down here. I'm not sure how he's getting down here. With
It's
this.
been, I mean, it's been a little chilly at night, but
Yeah,
you
a little
know,
frost,
a little
but
bit of frost.
I don't
That's
think he
about
can
it.
run the sleighs on the frost, but maybe he's parachuting in. I don't really know how he's going to get there. He just
Yeah.
promised me he'd be
He
there.
just shows up.
Yeah.
No, that's what Santa does.
Yep. Well, unfortunately, we have to talk about your health as well. And the flu season is upon us now. And if you think you don't need a flu shot, let me read you a little thing that came out about 5 hours ago. And this was about a mother of two that died after her flu diagnosis. And she was from Arizona. She died just one day after being diagnosed with the flu. She was 20 years old, very healthy, leading up to her illness, with the exception of suffering from an occasional cold. She leaves behind a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and started complaining of her symptoms just on Sunday. And Monday she was feeling sick, so her sister took her to urgent care and her kids. And they diagnosed him with flu and sent her home with flu medications. And Tuesday was taken to the hospital by her mother, where she was diagnosed with pneumonia, and she was placed on a ventilator but never recovered. So if you think that this can't progress rapidly, you're very much misinformed. So we still have flu vaccines. We're giving the quadrivalent vaccine, which is the one that has 4 strains of virus in it, so it can do a better job than the trivalent vaccine that we've had in the past. We don't have the concentrated senior dose of vaccine, which is really a trivalent, but it has 4 times as much of the active ingredient in it that the other one does. But it also has more side effects. We chose at our pharmacy not to do the high-dose senior one because of the side effects. The other store up on Hill Road did have the senior vaccine, but you can get the quadrivalent excuse me, the quadrivalent vaccine from us at the Bruno's location, and will be probably 60 to 70% effective. So there's all kinds of reasons that people don't want to take flu vaccine, and most of those excuses are just a big risk. If you get the flu anyway, you think your symptoms will be milder, they're less likely to have complications, less likely to be admitted to the hospital, and less likely to die. And what I just read you was where somebody did die after 2 days. So, and this was a 20-year-old. This was a very healthy person with 2 kids, and everybody thought that she would survive, that this was just a cold or a flu. The other reason that people, besides people don't think it works, it can, some people believe that it can cause the flu. And almost all flu vaccines can use an inactivated virus that can't trigger the flu. In the old days, we were giving an active virus. Now it's an inactive virus. But because the vaccine doesn't eliminate your chance of getting the flu completely, it only reduces it. There are some people who develop the flu after getting the shot because they don't get it in time. And a weakened virus can initiate itself in your body anyway. In any case, the CDC isn't recommending the one that we used to recommend for kids, which is the FluMist, and it is an active vaccine, but it's not working at all this year. So all of the flu vaccines that you would get now is are inactivated vaccines. Another reason that people don't want to get the flu shot is there's harmful mercury in flu vaccines. There is a mercury-containing preservative called thimerosal in certain vaccines, but it's only a trace amount. And the kind of mercury, it's ethyl mercury, is eliminated by the body rather quickly, more quickly than the methyl mercury, which is the one that's in seafood. So, moreover, numerous studies have discredited the idea that it's linked to autism. So, in any case, there are many thimerosal-free options for people of any age, but very, very micro amounts. And then, you know, I guess you kind of have choices. Which vaccine should you have? Teens and adults should consider a quadrivalent, which protects against the 4 different strains. People older have another option with the triple the dose of other quadrivalents. And 2 more choices, the Fluzone high dose and the Fluad, both protect against only 3 strains, but 4 times the amount of dose. We have the quadrivalent vaccine with the regular amount of dose, and believe me, you're better off getting it now than waiting. And if you're on Medicare and you wait, you're going to have to do a deductible at the first of the year. So it's really mindful to get this as soon as you can. And if you think about your activities in the next couple of weeks, most of us aren't going to be hermits. We're either going to be out shopping or being with a group of friends watching football games, or we're going to be enjoying Christmas together. So it's one of those times where an immunization is going to be very helpful, and it's not going to really cost you anything. So most insurances pay for it. We certainly hope that that's what's going to happen if you're on Medi-Cal or Partnership Health or Blue Cross, Blue Shield. Almost every insurance company pays for flu vaccines now. So be more than happy to be your pharmacy of choice and give you that flu vaccine. We have a pretty good amount left until the first of the year. When I called the wholesaler or the distributor that accumulates this, they were running low on some of the vaccines, but they were able to ship me 20 or 30 doses this week. So we're happy about that. If you do get the flu or a cold, there's steps that you need to take, and both of them are viral. Both of those are caused by a virus. Antibiotics are not going to do you any good. The symptoms for a cold are usually sore or scratchy throat that's running or stuffed nose, sneezing, and finally a cough. That's what I'm working on, I think. You don't have to call your doctor. There's no prescription drug approved to shorten the common cold. Antibiotics work against bacterial infections, not viral. And the antiviral drugs that can cause the flu, can ease the flu, can work against those viruses. So that's if you get it within 24 hours of having the flu. But practice good hygiene, wash your hands all the time. Usually the symptoms come on gradually. Don't try to sweat it out. You might feel good enough to exercise and maybe even think that working out hard will speed your recovery. It really doesn't do anything to do that. In essence, you should just moderate the activity. It probably won't hurt and might even help a little. So an exhausting workout is more likely to prolong the symptoms than shorten them. So get ready for congestion and sneezing and a runny nose, and use over-the-counter products if you need to. Actually, gargling with salt water is an effective home remedy that works very well for the sore throat and the cough. If it goes up to 5 days, you might consider calling a doctor. If the symptoms worsen or don't improve, you could be developing a bacterial infection, which would require an antibiotic. So, but all colds are derived from viruses, and so is the flu. If you have the flu, on day 1, you probably need to stay at home. You're highly contagious. You don't want to spread the germs. Pamper yourself if that's in your program. Didn't happen to be in mine, but you may even want to cook up some chicken soup. Ask your doctor about an antiviral drug such as Tamiflu. If you're 65 or older, if you're younger than 5 years old, pregnant, or just had a baby, or have asthma, heart disease, or other chronic diseases, you need to be very careful about taking over-the-counter medications also. These antivirals like Tamiflu is going to shorten it by 1 day. That maybe is, and the risk of pneumonia, I guess, but only if started within 48 hours of the onset of symptoms. Drink lots of fluids. Even if you don't have an appetite, drink lots of fluids. It's very important to watch for electrolytes and make sure you're taking some sort of a liquid. Consider alternating water with the salty liquid, such as chicken or vegetable broth. That's usually what I do. I actually enjoy that. But monitor your temperature and fever. Fever itself is not harmful, but in rare cases, sudden spikes can trigger seizures, especially in younger children, especially in if the fever indicates that you're probably still contagious too. So watch for complications. After probably 4 or 5 days, consider going back to school. Prepare for a lingering sore throat and cough. That's where the salt water is very effective. And be careful about taking over-the-counter things that might be controversial. There's an estimated 1 in 30 teens abuse dextromethorphan, which is the cough suppressant in Robitussin or guaifenesin. The most commonly used cough suppressant in the United States, and it's found more than 100 products, including those from Robitussin, from Theraflu, Trimenic, and Vicks. In high doses, this causes hallucinations and even a sense of euphoria or good feeling. We've had people buy a bottle of Robitussin, DMX, and go outside in their car and drink the whole bottle. And they were off to the market, so meaning they were ready to hallucinate. So many of those drugs contain antihistamines also, and decongestants and other ingredients, and high doses of those can simply multiply the risk of side effects. So if you've already got the flu, you already have a virus. Now, this isn't saying that these drugs, over-the-counter drugs, aren't helpful, but if you have teens, you might want to keep track of the DXM containing drugs in your home. Watch to see if he or she visits the websites often where people discuss using the drug. I don't know where those websites are, but you can go online and just put in hallucinations or DMX or guaifenesin, and that will probably pop up. Over-the-counter confusion is just horrendous because there are so many products out there. Should you take multi-symptoms or single ingredient drugs? Many cold and flu products contain a little bit of everything. NyQuil, severe cold and flu relief, has acetaminophen for aches and fevers, dextromethorphan for coughs, phenylephrine for decongestant, and doxylamine to help you sleep. You're better off to take a single ingredient drug. They won't conflict with each other. Multi-symptom drugs seem like you're treating everything, but the more drugs included is the greater risk of side effects. So the sedating antihistamines, such as diphenhydramine, found in many combinations, make people fall asleep. Somebody was in the other day and was getting Benadryl for a child, and I said, I just want to advise you that in children, the child was 4 years old, we talked about the dose, and I says, with children, this can do just the opposite. You can have hyperactivity with the child that takes Benadryl, and many people want to give it to them to sleep. Excuse me, and many adults do the same thing. And it's not the best sleeping aid there is, and with children it can make them hyperactive, not hypoactive. So, and whether you want to get brand name or trade name, the active ingredient is the same. We always try to suggest, we have them sitting by the shelf next to each other. We try to always show somebody the generic opposed to the brand name. The cost is usually much less. You can save money and go store brand or generic Sudafed PE, congestion, and Wall-Fed PE, the store brand for Walgreens, and both contain 10 milligrams of the decongestant. But and they're a lot less cheaper. So liquids might hit your bloodstream a bit faster than tablets, but most over-the-counter products are the difference are a few minutes, not significant. So if you're taking it because you want to get better quicker, by the time you got home, both of them would be acting. So there's always a danger of too much medication, and some of the products that can cause that are Tylenol extra strength, just the regular Tylenol or acetaminophen, 500 milligrams. If you take more than 6 pills a day, that's over 3,000 milligram. That is the maximum that you can take, is 6. Therapeutic or Theraflu, daytime severe cough and cold, 325 milligrams of acetaminophen. 8 pills of those is 2,600 milligram. That's the most that you can take. And NyQuil cold and flu nighttime, which has dextromethorphan and doxylamine in it, 2 tablets is the dose, and that's 650 milligrams. So there are all kinds of fatal diseases of drugs that contain acetaminophen, just plain Tylenol, and can cause you to lose your liver. You've heard me talk about the one case that we're aware of, that it was on Thanksgiving, and a gentleman had taken a Tylenol, and he had a glass of wine, and he woke up 3 days later with a new liver because it had attacked his liver, and he had completely became toxic and had to have a liver replacement. So again, that is a huge catastrophe, and certainly an exception, but something that can certainly happen when we have so many people that are taking Norco, for example, of an opiate. And it contains hydrocodone and acetaminophen. We're more worried about the toxicity of the acetaminophen when they overdose. That's not, that can kill their liver. A overdose of oxycodone or hydrocodone can stop their respiration, and they can completely quit breathing. So that's why there's just as much question about acetaminophen. When we have a doctor that calls in an increase in somebody's acetaminophen and hydrocodone, and it goes over the 3,000 milligrams or 4,500 milligrams, we'll call the doctor and say, this is what we know. You could be taking an over-the-counter product, such as plain Tylenol or extra-strength Tylenol, that adds even more to it. So just because things are over-the-counter, and just because they're natural substances, and just because you don't need a prescription for them, doesn't mean that it can't be toxic to your body. We see lots of people taking drugs that are over-the-counter and aren't lethal in regular doses, and they used to be on prescription, and then they've taken them off prescription, so there isn't any maximum that you can't buy a bottle of 200 milligram, for example, ibuprofen, and take 16 of those, or 3,200 milligram, which is the maximum amount, and keep doing that until you've developed a stomach ulcer or a toxicity to the ibuprofen. So there are limits on these things, even though they're over the counter. So We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the vaccines again and some diabetics. The only figures that you need to remember, there's HbA1c, there's blood glucose level, and there's the fasting or before meals glucose, and we'll give you those figures. Hi, my name is Bill Kearney, pharmacist and owner of North Lake Medical Pharmacies. Do you take non-prescription medications to relieve your headache, fever, or arthritis? If so, you're not alone. Americans consume more than 50 billion non-prescription over-the-counter medications each year. When taken as directed, they are safe and effective, but they're still serious medications. At North Lake Medical Pharmacy, our pharmacists want you to know they are always available to talk to you about your medications, including over-the-counter medications. So talk to our pharmacists for your good health. We also want you to know that we care about your health. By working together with our pharmacists, you can get the most out of the medications that help make you feel better when you're sick or help keep you healthy. So remember, talk to our pharmacists for your good health. North Lake Medical Pharmacies, with 2 locations to serve you, on Hill Road next to Sutter Lakeside Hospital, and outside the Bruno Shops Mart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard.
This is the Caltrans Road Information Bulletin for Lake and Mendocino County State Highways for the week beginning Friday, December 1st. In Lake County on Route 175 near Road 110, weekdays, you might see 5-minute delays. In Mendocino County on Route 1, south of the South Fork Eel River Bridge, weekdays, expect 10-minute delays. On Route 20 near Road 144 on the 4th and 5th, you might see 10-minute delays. On Highway 101 north of Ridgewood Ranch Road, weekdays expect 10-minute delays. Near the Hermitage Vista Point, expect 10-minute delays. And south of the Dora Creek Bridge, weekdays expect 5-minute delays. On 162 west of Pukini, weekdays expect 10-minute delays. On 175 near the Russian River Bridge, weekdays expect 5-minute delays. And near the Lake County line, expect 10-minute delays. That wraps up the bulletin. You can always check 1-800-GAS Road and QuickMap for updates on your route as well. And like us on Facebook for more updates. That's Caltrans District 1.
The Redwood Complex fire has decimated many families in Mendocino County. Willits Furniture Center is donating a minimum of $10,000 in home furnishings to one of the Redwood Complex fire victims. If you know someone that has been displaced by the fire, is in need of assistance, has little or no insurance, and is struggling to financially recover from their loss, please nominate them by going to willitsfurniture.com. Willits Furniture Center is also offering a 25% discount to any fire victim that has lost their home.
Raising your family, tending to your animals, growing your own produce, preparing for the seasons, living the country life. Hi, I'm Jody Henke, host of Living the Country Life. Catch me every Monday through Friday at 9:35 a.m. and 4:35 p.m. for ideas and inspiration for your place in the country. That's Living the Country Life here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBS.
We bring the community closer together, supporting business in every way. We're helping make your dreams come true, working hard for you.
The Lake County Chamber of Commerce would like to recognize their member of the month, Tom Lincoln from Lincoln Levitt Insurance Agency. Lincoln Levitt Insurance Agency insures hundreds of local and out-of-county businesses, providing such coverage as fire liability, business auto, workers' comp, umbrella liability, director and officer liability, and group benefits. It also provides a full line of insurance products to local farmers and agribusiness owners. To request an insurance review, Tom and his staff are located at 650 North Main Street in Lakeport. They can be contacted at 263-7162 or through the website at lincolnlevitt.com.
Lake County Chamber of Commerce, we're steady and strong, help us shape the future.
All right, Bill, we're back.
Okay. We have a lot of diabetics in this county, and a lot of them in the world, and soon they believe 50% of the population in the United States will be diabetic. And tracking the blood sugar is really vital for people who are struggling with the disease, even if you're already following the habits to maintain healthy blood sugar levels. Since your target blood sugar, meaning the glucose levels, change throughout the day, it's important to keep in mind what those targets really should be. and you use the blood sugar chart as a healthy level reference when you wake up, before and after meals, and at bedtime. So I'm going to give you 3 figures so you don't have to remember all these others. And if you're a diabetic and you have to do tracking your blood sugar 3 times a day, you probably already know these, but I know things change, and since it's rather concise, I thought I would give these to you. Fasting or before meal glucose, that means usually in the morning when you get up, before you have breakfast, 90 to 130 milligrams per deciliter. Don't worry about the DL, you just need to worry about the numbers. After a meal, 2 hours after the start of your meal, should be greater than 180 milligrams. And before bedtime, 100 to 140 milligrams. So 90 to 30 fasting, 180 after 2 hours after your meal, and bedtime 100 to 140. If you stay within those realms, you're going to be pretty safe. If you're doing the A1C protein that's in red blood cells, and it binds with the glucose, because there are red blood cells there, they have a lifespan about 3 to 4 months. The amount of blood sugar, or A1C, collects can reveal the long-term average of your glucose levels. That's why when you go into the doctor's office and they do an A1C, you can translate that percentage into the number that we're looking for, and we're looking for that number to be under 7. So, and if you're used to cheating before you go into the doctor's office and with your diet, say you know 3 days ahead of time you're going to go into the doctor and have a blood test, it's not going to do you any good when they do the A1C. If they do a simple blood test with a meter like you have at home, that might help that. But the other one is a memory of 3 to 4 months. So if you take an A1C, it goes back and converts everything into a much smaller number that is significant. And if you get an 8 or a 9 and you're getting these kind of figures before you came into the doctor's office that are right up with what I just told you, it's not going to lie for you when you do the A1C. The A1C is going to, and right now, there isn't anything reliable that does A1C at home. And you can't change that. Once you get an A1C level, that's 3 to 4 months of data. So it would be like storing every blood sugar you took, which you can do in your meter, and then getting an average of what it was and then converting that into A1C levels. So as we begin to increase the amount of diabetics that we have in this country, and we've tried the diet and exercise, and it's not working, then we either have to change our habits or go on medication, or both. But diet and exercise comes first. You know, we talked the last month about the new zoster shingles vaccine, and called Shingrix, and it will be coming out, according to the pharmacist letter, which I just did yesterday, that it should be available in December, and the CDC guidelines are to be published in early 2018. But there are a little bit more, there's a little bit more information about Shingrix than we had before. And I get these questions when, right now, because it's the end of the year, I'm giving a lot of Zostavax shots, and I feel like I'm compelled to let you know about the new vaccine that's coming out, but I don't know for sure when it's coming out, to see if you really want to get the vaccine, which is looked upon favorably, to get the one that's available right now, and then get the other one as soon as the other one comes out. It's a non-live recombinant vaccine, which instead of a live virus, It is a inactive virus like the flu virus is, and it's too soon to say if it can be given to immunocompromised patients, which are people that are undergoing chemotherapy or people that have HIV, have an immune system that is compromised. This vaccine, the plans are to start giving at age 50 instead of 60. Shingles actually, the risk starts to increase at the age of 50, and preliminary evidence suggests that Shingrix immunity may last longer than Zostavax. Right now, we thought Zostavax lasted only 5 years. It's been 8 years since it's been out on the market, and most people that have gotten the Zostavax shot still haven't gotten shingles, or if they have, it's been slightly reduced. Excuse me. If you've had Zostavax and you want to, excuse me here because I'll be able to not talk in a minute. Thank you. If you've had the Zostavax shot, and they recommend that you still get the Shingrix, or this new one, preliminary evidence says that it lasts longer than the Zostavax, and if you do get the Shingrix, even after you've had the Zostavax to boost the immunity, you need to wait at least 2 months, 8 weeks, after the Zostavax to give the new vaccine. So if you've had a Zostavax for more than 2 months ago, or then you're available to get the new vaccine when it comes out. You will know when it comes out. It will be advertised on every media outlet there is. So remember, they're saying that this one you start giving at 50 instead of at 60. Wait at least 8 weeks after you've had the Zostavax shot to get this one. This one comes, because it's an inactive vaccine, comes in 2 shots. Intramuscular shots, just like you get the flu vaccine in, and the Zostavax goes in under the skin, subcutaneous, but this one goes in the muscle, and separated by 2 to 6 months instead of 1 subcutaneous shot like Zostavax. You have to make sure you come back for the second dose, so we have to set up some reminders or catch you when you're coming in for refills of your prescriptions. Excuse me. The one downside of this one is there's some injection pain and redness, and that seems to happen with almost everybody. It'll last for only a couple of days, but you know, anything that's good for you is probably going to hurt a little bit, and they couldn't make it more effective and then not make it hurt a little bit. So most insurers and Medicare D will cover it. It'll cost about $280 for the 2-shot series, versus they have $212 for Zostavax. It costs us $218. If you need other immunizations the same time you get the Shingrix shot, such as pneumonia or Tdap, you can get it. You can't get the fluad shot, the adjudicated flu vaccine, so, but you've probably already got that. The other good thing about this one is it's much more effective than the Zostavax shot, where it was about 51% effective for the Zostavax shot. This is going to be about 97% effective for preventing shingles. A huge difference in effectiveness of this drug opposed to the Zostavax shot. Not that the Zostavax was a bad vaccine. Not that you had to be concerned about whether or not it was going to be completely effective or not. We always tell you when we're giving you the shot that it could be a risk, and And then it happens, and you get the shot, but it's not going to be that effective. I mean, it's going to be more effective than Zostavax, and by a substantial amount. So you could be pretty assured when you get the Shingrix shot that you're going to have only a 3% chance of getting the shingles unless you've been contaminated already, because it takes about 10 days to 2 weeks to get in the system. Remember, with shingles, you can't get it from somebody unless you touch them with those open sores, and you get that fluid that comes out of the cell, out of the nerve endings, and that way it can be transmitted to you, but not by coughing, not by any other means. So just because you're around somebody with shingles doesn't mean that you're going to catch it from them if you haven't been immunized. You know, I get people coming in all the time saying my Ambien isn't working, my blood pressure isn't working. I had a gentleman that came in yesterday and said, you know, my blood pressure is too low. I'm kind of fainting, I'm passing out. And I said, what is it? And he said, 130 over 68. And I said, that's perfect. You know, the standard of practice has changed. And this gentleman's well informed. It's not that he doesn't know, but it might have been a combination of the two drugs, and they had increased his dosage, and he thought maybe it was too much. But he shouldn't have been passing out, or he shouldn't have been feeling like he was faint by taking the medication. But the reading that he got was not a bad reading. I know that most of you have been preached about the usual things for getting enough sleep, sleeping on a regular schedule, avoiding caffeine, exercising regularly, managing stress. Excuse me. But if it's been weeks since you've had a good night's sleep, it's time for maybe over-the-counter aid. But here's what you need to know about those medications. Most over-the-counter drugs contain antihistamines, and that's because they're sedating. And tolerance to the sedative effects of antihistamines can happen right away. So the longer you take it, the less likely they are to make you sleepy because you develop a tolerance to them. In addition, some of those over-the-counter aids can leave you groggy and unwell the next day, like a hangover effect. Medication interactions are possible if you're taking something that has multiple medications in it, like we just talked about earlier. But here are some of the over-counter aids that are available, and some of the side effects. Diphenhydramine, which is Benadryl. Now, that may not say anything to you, but if you take Unisom, sleep gels, or others, Benadryl or diphenhydramine is a sedating antihistamine. Side effects include daytime drowsiness, dry mouth, blurred vision, constipation, and urinary retention. If you're in a skilled nursing center, these drugs are on the list of do not give to anybody over the age of 75 because it dries up your eyes, it slows down your central nervous system, and can cause some discomfort, can cause urinary problems. Eyes can get high pressure in them from it. So that's one of the problems that you can have, or some of the problems you can have. Doxylamine succinate, Unisom. Doxylamine is a sedating antihistamine, and side effects are similar to those of Benadryl. They use it in treating jet lag or reducing the time it takes to fall asleep. But although the effect is typically mild, side effects can lead to a headache and daytime sleepiness. Melatonin, and I guess this is the biggest one that we have. This is a hormone that helps control your natural sleep-wake cycle. They use that a lot for jet lag. And some research suggests that it may be helpful in treating that or reducing the time it takes to fall asleep. Although the effect is typically mild, the same thing can happen. It can cause headache and daytime sleepiness. you have to remember with melatonin, all it does is reset your circadian rhythm. So it makes you think that it's nighttime if it isn't, and that's why it's effective for jet lag a lot of the time. So it essentially closes the blind and says it's dark out now, you can go to sleep. And it varies in strength from 2.5 to 3 to 5 to 10 milligram. And we just did a thing a couple of weeks ago about watching the quantity that you take because it can be toxic. Another one of those over-the-counter things. Valerian, which you probably heard of valerian root. It's a supplement made from the plant, sometimes taken as a sleep aid. A few studies indicate that some therapeutic benefit has been realized from it. It generally doesn't appear to have side effects, but you just can't tell because many of these things do. So when you're using these over-the-counter medications, you want to get your doctor's okay for over-the-counter, because lots of times when you're evaluating, when we're evaluating your medications, we don't know what you're taking over-the-counter. And if you ever come in for a brown bag check, and I plead for you to do that sometime. I know we're all too busy, and maybe after the holiday you'll have more time, but bring a bag, a paper brown bag, or a see-through kitchen bag, and put all the medications that you take, including over-the-counter medications, in the bag, and bring them in to me, no matter where you get the pharmacy, no matter what pharmacy fills them. I will go over each drug with you and talk about them and ask you why you're taking them and how long you've been taking them and what you're taking them for. And invariably, I will find a drug that has been discontinued that you're still taking, or an over-the-counter drug that maybe is doing the same thing as a prescription drug, or vice versa, and maybe one of those that you can get rid of, or you're taking a generic. For example, Lanoxin is a brand name of digoxin, and you'll have one labeled Lanoxin and one labeled digoxin, and it's a duplicate of the same drug, just with a different name on the front. So start with your doctor. It's a good idea to ask him if, or her, if a sleep aid might interact with the other medications that you're taking and determine the best dosage. Sleep aids pose risk for women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, and might pose risk to people over 75 and increase the risk of stroke. Because remember, these things slow down the central nervous system. Keep precautions in mind. Diphenhydramine and doxylamine aren't recommended for people who have closed-angle glaucoma, and that's why I'm saying the pressure in the eye can go up. Asthma, COPD, sleep apnea, severe liver disease, and it goes on. Urinary retention, those are not recommended because they may increase the risk of dementia. In fact, we did a study, or reported on a study this last spring, where it was in England, and 12.5 milligram of diphenhydramine or Benadryl increased the amount of, or the onset of dementia seriously, and lessened the time it would take for them to become demented by just one. I know people that take 4 or 5 of these a night, and it's not healthy for you. And you take it one day at a time. If it works, you may not need it every day. Over-the-counter sleep aids are a temporary solution for insomnia. They're not intended to be used for longer than 2 weeks. I have a friend that I read at night to go to sleep, and sometimes I get through 2 pages, sometimes I get through 10 chapters. I have a friend that reads at night too, and she can read all night long and never go to sleep from it, and has trouble sleeping, and it becomes a real problem because you're not well, and if you're healing, if you had surgery or something like that, your body's just not at its optimum to progress in healing when you're not getting enough sleep. So try to avoid alcohol. Never mix those with sleep aids. Alcohol can increase the sedative effects of the medication. And I know a person that takes the pills at night with a cocktail. And I've said many times that they shouldn't do that, but they still do, and they've been doing it for years. So, and you shouldn't drive or attempt to drive or operate machinery while you're taking these sleep aids. Everyone needs the benefits of a good night's sleep. If you have to have trouble sleeping, then consult your physician. In order to lifestyle changes, your doctor might recommend behavior therapy. Who knows? It's a complicated thing, and as we begin to age, it becomes even more complicated because you have aches and pains, and you've gone through a ton of surgeries, and now it's time to you finally hit the hay, and you don't feel good, and you just want to get to sleep. We have a hot tub. You ever have a hot tub, Paul?
We have a hot tub at my house.
Do you?
Yeah, we
use it?
It's not in use right now.
Well,
It takes a lot of maintenance and power to run, and
it does.
You know, and it's interesting because during the summertime we put up a pool, and the pool is less maintenance than the hot tub. I think it's got to do with the heat, and it grows bacteria and stuff like that. So, but no, we have one. We've used them. We've used it quite a bit.
We've had one for all of our lives, all of our married lives. It started out with a redwood hot tub and then have a fiberglass, but lately we started going in it again at night just before we go to bed. And my wife has restless leg syndrome, and it's really severe RLS. And sometimes I put a heating pad on her. Sometimes I go down and put a towel around her legs. So, she has involuntary movement. She doesn't even know that she's moving her leg at night, and, in wide fashion. So we started going in the hot tub. This is only our second night of doing that because you go home and you're tired, and, it's right outside our bedroom door. We've had it for years, and it really helps. It
is nice.
It gets the circulation going. It makes you tired, but it is work. You do have to watch it.
Keep up on it. Yeah.
It's not as bad in the wintertime because it doesn't get us. Ours is out on the sunny side of the house. In the summertime, it gets to be over 100 back there. But in the wintertime, it's the breeze comes off the lake, and it's not bad at all. And you can't afford to heat it if you're not going to use it, and because it takes a lot of power to juice it up to 104 degrees every day.
Keep it.
And we've thought about just renting it on the weekends, and that we would spend more time using it. But it's a very good tool. It's a very good therapeutic tool, and it's something that we found pretty effective. Even taking a hot bath or shower and getting the skin going or circulating has been very, very helpful. So the things that are changing now when you go to the doctor to get a flu shot or to get a medication for a disease or something is the fact that they don't want to give it to you. They don't want to give you pain medication. They don't want to give you antibiotic if you have a viral disease. They're careful about giving you non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. We know now that they're leery about giving you PPIs or protein pump inhibitors because they could cause, and it makes doctors are very liable, and it makes them very uneasy about what to do. And they have so many choices now. It can be tricky to go through all the medications. For example, NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, all of a sudden they became over-the-counter like Aleve and ibuprofen and naproxen, and you don't want to use too much of any of these. Don't be swayed by some of the ads that are on television now with Mobic, for example. Those are they're COX-2 inhibitors and traditional NSAIDs, but there's not much evidence that they're safer. Actually, they come out with, in evaluating all these, they consider naproxen or Aleve, ibuprofen, or celecoxib, which is Celebrex, as the ones of choice. Naproxen or naproxen is both prescription and over-the-counter. Ibuprofen is both prescription and over-the-counter. They're inexpensive. We know the most about their safety. We continue to recommend those NSAIDs in patients, limiting them in people with cardiovascular disease and GI risk, because they all can cause some heartburn, but they're less likely to increase blood pressure. In patients with GI risk, meaning stomach bleeding or something similar to that, excuse me, we lean towards Siloxybib because it's what they call a COX-2 inhibitor, and it can be given to people who have some gastric problems. I took naproxen for years until I developed excuse me, an irritation in my gastrointestinal system, and switched to Vioxx. If you remember, Vioxx was a COX-2 inhibitor that people took, and it really did a good job in helping them, but it increased the risk of a heart attack and a stroke. They took it off the market, and I can't remember what the other one was. There were two of them, and then the third one was Celebrex, and they left Celebrex on the market. And they appear to be safer than a lot of the other drugs. Sometimes they will tell you you're better off taking a steroid if it's for a short amount of time, rather than taking a non-steroid anti-inflammatory, because it works better and it is less toxic over a short period of time than some of those drugs can be. We talked the other day, probably quite a while ago, about cinnamon. Patients often ask whether cinnamon is helpful for diabetes, and it has been shown that it has been. It doesn't help those people with diabetes 1, which is the onset as a child, but it may improve insulin sensitivity and lower glucose in patients with type 2 diabetes. Now, what we talked about was, I'm still losing my voice here, folks. Excuse me. What we talked about was the two kinds of cinnamon that were out there. The cinnamon Ameridium, I might be pronouncing that wrong, and the cinnamon cassia. It's the cinnamon cassia that's the one that helps diabetes. And I was talking to Paul during one of our shows about going into the grocery store and finding, looking at all the cinnamon. Most of them don't say, they say, it's already time to say goodbye.
Did they say goodbye?
I want to remind you, we're North Lake Medical Pharmacy with two locations for you. At 5136 Hill Road East, across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call us there at 263-6192. And outside the Bruno Shops Mart, 347 Lakeport Boulevard. And remember there, Santa Claus, ho, 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 this afternoon from 2 to 6 o'clock. Come see Santa at Bruno's. North Lake Pharmacy at Bruno's.
All right, Bill, we'll get your voice back for next week's show, and be sure to join us at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays for Health Talk here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM Lakeport.